working on yours?
The
No,
what?
yeah, it's just. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Metro Plan Orlando MAC meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Keith Trace, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. We also have a team of folks working to ensure the meeting runs smoothly for us in the room and those listening online. As we continue to meet in person, all committee members are required to be present here in the Metro Plan Orlando boardroom, while staff will continue to stream our meetings online for public access. Now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone will please rise, and I'll ask Mayor Henson to lead us in the pledge. All right, this morning, if you will please keep your microphones muted unless you have been recognized to speak. I do ask that all committee members activate your microphones before speaking and then turn them back off when you're complete. As a reminder, the microphone is turned on and off by pressing the blue button, the one with the little talking face icon on it, located on the screen in front of you. Today, we welcome another new member to the MAC, the Town of Eatonville Mayor. Welcome.
Welcome, Mayor Gardner.
Would you like to take a minute to introduce yourself to the group?
Just a minute. My name is Angie Gardner. I was just elected March 5th. Glad to be here. I've been a council person for the past 2 years, so somewhat familiar with the territory, but it's not the same. It's not the same being mayor, but I'm glad to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Glad to have you and welcome. There are 2 public comment points in this meeting. Members of the public participating virtually, if you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature on your Zoom screen. If attending by phone, you can use the *9 to request to be recognized. We also accepted comments via email and phone message before the meeting. Guidelines for those comments are posted online at metroplanorlando.org/virtual meetings. We want this and all future meetings to be accessible to all. Participants may join by computer, tablet, and phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact Metro Plan Orlando. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Alex Troger of Metro Plan Orlando staff for the agenda review.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My review will be pretty quick today. Very few announcements. Just wanted to echo our remarks. Welcome, Mayor Gardner. As the chairman mentioned, as we come back face to face, those RSVPs, as I always say, are always important. So always be on the lookout for Kathy and Lisa's email so we can, host these meetings. As you look at your agenda today, you're going to see 2 really important preview presentations. And these are kind of annual recurring processes, and you'll learn a lot more about those later today. But these are preview presentations on our transportation improvement program, as well as on our prioritized project list. Keith and I will be presenting a little bit more about that today, but we'll be coming back at your next meeting for action. So this is more of a draft preview. Ask questions. We're here to answer those. We've done the same with our other advisory committees over the past few weeks, and we'll be presenting that same information to the board as a preview next week. So again, this is a preview, but the reason I raise it, these are important topics for us as an organization, and we'll be coming back next month asking for your approval of those items. As it pertains to the printed agenda, we only have 1 change, minor casting change, but we do have Ms. Carol Scott filling in for Seose Fine from Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. Carol's been with us for a long time, so we're well represented from the Turnpike. But with that, Mr. Chair, that completes my announcements, and we have no other changes to the printed agenda. And with that, we will now, I'll ask Ms. Smith to call the roll.
I'll ask all committee members to keep your microphones muted until your name is called. Please say here or present. Anderson.
Here.
Guthrie.
Here.
Gardner,
Here.
Dowless,
Here.
Sackett, Firstner, Foraker, Henson,
Here.
McCann,
Here.
O'Brien, Ramos, Sladek,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Trace.
Here?
That concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. We will now hear public comments on action items. Do we have anyone who would like to speak on these action items? If so, please use the raise hand feature on your screen or *9 on your phone keypad. When we call your name, the host will unmute your microphone. You will see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Please accept that prompt and activate your microphone. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record and limit all comments to 2 minutes or less.
There are no hands raised on the attendees side, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. Were there any written comments received before the meeting?
Nothing in advance of the meeting.
All right, thank you very much. All right, up next is agency reports and partner updates. Mr. Tyler Burgett with District 5, you're up.
Good morning. I'm Tyler Burgett with Florida Department of Transportation, District 5. Excuse me. I swear it's allergies. So the only highlight I brought for this morning, well, there are many, but the most notable would be Wekiva Parkway, Section 6 opened, impacting definitely Lake and Seminole County and just the region as a whole as we're making progress with the Wekiva Parkway. And this actually marks the entirety of the Lake County section now being opened. And the opening went very smoothly, and the traffic along State Road 46 was not negatively impacted. The next section of the Wekiva Parkway, being Section 7A, is anticipated to open August 1st. So that's one of our highlights moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for DOT? All right, seeing none, up next is Mr. Miles O'Keefe with Links.
Morning, everyone. Welcome, Mayor Gardner. Miles O'Keefe. I'm the manager of strategic planning at Links and Links liaison for this committee. Keep it brief. So we continue to sit at above 50,000 passengers per day on our daily ridership. We did have our highest single day since March of 2020 on May 3rd, just shy of 54,000 passengers. Separate from that, we are very excited to have a small role in the Special Olympics that are going to be here in town. Opening ceremony on June 5th. Links will be coordinating with the EOCs for the event and providing buses as a means of air conditioning for those that are participating, so everybody can still have fun but also be cool as we're all living in our wonderful summer right now. So that completes my update. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. O'Keefe. Anyone have any questions? All right, up next is Florida Turnpike Enterprise. Ms. Scott, you're
Yes.
recognized.
Thank you very much. One quick update on the Turnpike main line and the section of the beach line that we own. We're actually installing a connected vehicle pilot project. So we're going to be installing some queue warning systems, some curved speed warning systems, and a wrong way detection device. So when all this equipment is installed, we'll be conducting some analysis and testing to see how the infrastructure will communicate to connected vehicles and how they'll communicate back. So we're looking forward to finishing this project up early next year and then analyzing the data and seeing how else we can add it to the system.
Very
That's it for
interesting.
me. Yep.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? All right, we have one question.
Kevin McCann with the City of Winter Springs. If I can't, you were mentioning the wrong way detectors, and I know that it's been a common question with the City of Winter Springs. For example, our deputy mayor was involved in a wrong way driver that hospitalized him for months. And we've had other residents have. Can you talk at all about that technology? Is it simply just a warning to the highway patrol, or is there any kind of tools that maybe are in the pipeline for the future? 417 is where he
Right.
impacted with a
So I
a
know
wrong-way driver.
on the 417, they've installed signage that flashes red. That's for somebody to notice, and if they're impaired, they might not get it right until they get on. But there's also equipment there that will notify the traffic management center, and then the traffic management center is the one who will notify law enforcement. But this, what we're installing right here on the main line, it's actually at our Turkey Lake Service Plaza for the tourists who happen to go northbound when they're supposed to go southbound. So this technology goes a little bit further, where it will notify actual people in vehicles who are driving, so they're not relying on a traffic management sign, but they can get a message in their vehicle that there's a car coming their way. So we're working on that. That's the next step, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, my worry with some of that is how everyone just kind of blindly follows Google sometimes, and it's not always the most accurate. Or even diverging diamond interchanges kind of get confusing for some folks, and implementing that a lot more. Mr. Troger?
Yeah, just to add, Mayor McCain, as it relates to the wrong way driving detection, our transportation systems management operations, our traffic engineering advisory group had a presentation just a few months ago from some research that UCF conducted with the Central Florida Expressway Authority. So it can provide some examples to what Carol mentioned about the types of devices, but how kind of a lot of that works. So we have like a 15-minute presentation. I'll send that out to the group afterwards. I'll send you a YouTube link with the minute marker on there so you can see that. But I think that'll provide you a lot of insight onto the possibilities in the near term.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll share that with our community. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Was there anyone online that had any questions for agency partners? All right, perfect.
I don't see that there are any hands raised online.
All right, on action items today, we have one action item, which is our approval of the May 5th, 2022 meeting minutes, and those are in tab 1 of your agenda packets. Mr. Troger, did we have an update to that?
Yeah, we did. If you recall, Mayor Forker joined us remotely, virtually at the last meeting. It was our first in-person meeting in over 24 months. So we did have, based on our records, marked as absent. It has been brought to our attention, and it's up to the MAC. We can, if there's a motion, we can make that correction and make it an excused absence if it's the prerogative of this group.
I move we approve the minutes, but adding that Mayor Foraker was here or was participating remotely.
Or just an excused absence?
An
Is
excused
that how
absence, okay.
I'd
However
say
we want to,
both.
whatever we're
You want both?
allowed
Yeah. Okay, because
to-
you were
he
here.
He was included
Yeah.
in the discussion to the extent he wanted to be.
Yeah, so my assistant, just to add some color, sent Kathy a heads up, hey, Nick needs to come be virtual, and didn't hear from Kathy. It's like 24-hour notice. Didn't hear from Kathy. And so Renee controls my schedule and would not have made the change she made, and I would have been here. That was the challenge, is she assumed that I could do virtual because she didn't hear back from. And we're not throwing Kathy under the bus, but Renee's kind of new to my organization and trying to manage a lot of traffic, so.
Oh, and if it's not on my calendar, I'm not showing up.
So I don't think there's any buses for anyone to be
Yeah.
thrown under. I think, it was the first meeting back in 24 months. We're trying to provide some flexibility in that process, I
Yeah,
think.
so pardon our,
Yeah.
confusion.
And the
on that.
bylaws grant that to the group. If you recall, the most recent bylaws amendments provides that flexibility to the advisory committee.
All right. So what's the pleasure of the MAC?
If the motion was to excuse his absence and note he was attendance in virtual, then I second it.
Perfect. And was that your motion, Mayor Sladen?
I'd like, may I make the motion? Sorry, may I make the motion that he be considered, because it was the first meeting where we did not do virtual. May I make the motion that may he be considered present with no excuses?
That was what I was
Or non-voting.
trying to, so present, for attendance purposes, it shows up as a P, not an excused absence. But note that wherever it needs to be noted that it was virtual.
Okay, so it's your motion, so did you want to amend it to say that it's approval of the minutes with that notation?
Yes.
And as amended? All right.
Yes.
Can you please restate that? Into the microphone.
I move we approve the minutes of May 5th with the following change, that we note that Mayor Foraker was present, so we note it with a P, and wherever it may be necessary, clarify that he was here virtually.
All right, thank you very much. And do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, properly motioned and second. Is there any further discussion from anyone online or in the room? All right, hearing none. This is a voice vote. All committee members, please unmute your microphones. For those in the room, you can just speak out. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Today, we have 4 informational presentations. For participants online, you can use the raise hand feature, and you'll be recognized. And in the room, if we could please hold our questions until the presentation is over. And first up, we have a presentation on the draft TIP. Mr. Keith Caskey of Metro Plan Orlando staff will present the information. You are recognized. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Just want to give you all a preview of our new fiscal year 23 to 27 Transportation Improvement Program. And I think Alex mentioned earlier, this will be coming back at your meeting next month as an action item. And on your agenda, there's a link where you can review some of the main sections of the new draft TIP. And I wanted to start off with a brief overview. The TIP is one of the main documents that we as an MPO are required to produce based on federal and state legislation. And the purpose of the TIP is to identify all the transportation projects that are funded in our region over the next 5 years with federal or state funds. So any federal or state funded project has to be included in our TIP. And then we have the option to include locally funded projects in our document for information purposes. And we've always done that since those are important projects as well, and it gives a more complete picture. And then the TIP is updated on an annual basis, so we will be back about this time next year with a preview of another new TIP. Now this slide shows the amount of federal and state funds that are programmed over the 5 years of the TIP, and this is broken out by the main categories of projects in the document. And all of these federal and state funded projects have to be approved by our board to be included in the TIP in order for these projects to move forward and be implemented. And this amounts to over $3 billion worth of projects. Now the process of developing our new TIP started last year when we put together the fiscal year 2027 to 35 prioritized project list. And the prioritized project list is another document that we update every year. And you'll be hearing Alex's preview of the new prioritized project list in the next presentation. But this is the one from last year. And we like to call this a bridge document because it kind of fills in the gap between our long-range metropolitan transportation plan, which has a target year of 2045, and the 5-year TIP. And it includes a list of projects that were either completely unfunded or had unfunded phases in the 5-year work program and TIP as of last year. And these were divided into different categories. We had the highway projects, what we call the Transportation System Management and Operations, or TSMO projects. And for those of you that are new, those are relatively low-cost projects that, have a maximum cost of, between $4 to $5 million or less. And they're designed to help improve safety and traffic flow, and they can include things like minor intersection improvements, putting in traffic signals, dynamic message signs, infrastructure for autonomous vehicles and things like that. And then there was a list of bicycle pedestrian projects and also a list of transit projects. And the projects on each of these lists were all ranked by priority as candidates for funding, and this was used by Florida Department of Transportation to develop their fiscal year 23 to 27 tentative 5-year work program, and then we used the work program to put together this new TIP. Now, I wanted to start off by looking at the highway projects that were in last year's prioritized project list, and these were divided into several different categories. We have the National Highway System projects, which are mainly the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate projects, and also includes a truck parking project in the I-4 corridor. Then there's the State Roadway System list, which is a mixture of different types of projects, Some of these are widening projects, which involve, of course, adding lanes to existing roads. But most of these are non-capacity, what we call complete streets projects. And these are designed to help improve safety and traffic flow on a roadway corridor without adding capacity. And so this can include a combination of different types of improvements, like minor intersection improvements, putting in sidewalks, bike lanes, bus pull-offs, things of that nature, depending on how much space is available in the corridor. Then there's the off-system construction list, which is mainly a list of widening projects on local roads that are not on the state road system. And then there's also a list of complete streets projects that are also on local roads. And on your agenda, there's also a link where you can review last year's prioritized project list that I went through and updated to highlight those projects that have had significant changes since last year. So I'm not going to go through the whole list. For the presentation today, I'm just going to mainly focus on those projects that have had changes in the new TIP. So starting off with the National Highway System projects, again, these are mainly the I-4 on the ultimate projects and also the truck parking project. And the truck parking project had funds programmed for construction in fiscal year 2026 in last year's TIP, and that was unchanged in the new TIP. And there weren't really any major changes to the Beyond the Ultimate projects, but there were several interim projects on I-4 that are being implemented kind of in anticipation of the Beyond the Ultimate projects. And these were included in a group of TIP amendments that was approved late last year. And I'm just going to briefly review those projects. Two of these are express lane projects that are funded for construction in the current fiscal year, in fiscal year 2022. So of course, these don't show up in the new fiscal year 23 to 27 TIP, but these will be getting underway in the near future. And these include the two westbound express lanes on I-4 from west of State Road 528 to west of Kirkman Road, where they will tie into the existing express lanes. And this also includes an interchange improvement at Sand Lake Road. And then there's the westbound single buffer express lane from west of Central Florida Parkway to west of State Road 528. And this is the project they call the tube because it only has access at the beginning and the end of the express lane. Then there's a similar single buffer express lane from west of State Road 536 to west of Darrell Carter Parkway. Now this project is funded for construction in fiscal year 2023, so this is in the new TIP. And this phase is being funded with the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act federal stimulus funds. And then there are several interchange projects that are also funded for construction in fiscal year 2023 with the ARPA funds that were included in the same group of TIP amendments. These include two interchange improvements in Orange County on I-4 at State Road 535 and State Road 528. And then there are two interchange operations improvements on I-4 in Seminole County at County Road 46A and US 1792.
Could I ask a quick question before we move on from this? Before the ARPA funded projects, the express lanes, are those being funded with regular money or is that with toll money? Because it would be presumably part of the toll system. I'm not sure how those are funded.
No, well, you're talking about the ones that are funded in the current year. Those are just being funded with regular SIS funds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Then the state road system projects, we had several projects on that list that had changes since last year. Two of these involve the 6-laning projects on East State Road 50, and these projects both had changes kind of in the negative sense. The 6-laning project on State Road 50 from Juliota Road to State Road 520. In last year's TIP, this was funded for construction in fiscal year 2025. And those funds were moved out beyond 2027. So this is no longer shown in the TIP, and those funds were moved out because of cost increases. So once the funds are programmed within the 5 years of the TIP, then it'll be shown in the document again. But right now, it's not shown. And then the 6th laning of State Road 50 from Avalon Park Boulevard to Juliota Road. Last year, that was funded for construction in fiscal year 2024. and those funds were moved out 3 years to 2027, again because of cost increases. Then we have a complete streets project on Orange Avenue from Clay Avenue to Fairbanks Avenue, and the safety improvement portion of that project from Clay Avenue to US 1792 is funded for construction in fiscal year 2024. The other segment from 1792 to Fairbanks Avenue is still unfunded at this point. Then there's the complete streets project on Robinson Street from Garland Avenue to Crystal Lake Drive in Orlando. That's now funded for construction in fiscal year 2024. And then there's a safety improvements project on Orange Avenue from Grant Street to Gore Street, and that's funded for construction now in fiscal year 2023. Then we have the off-system construction projects. Again, these are mainly widening projects on local roads in the area. And I've listed the projects on the slide there. I'm not going to go through all these since none of these projects received federal or state funding in the new 5-year work program. But these projects are all candidates for our federal funds as well as state transportation regional incentive program funds. Then we have the complete streets projects. There were several projects on that list that have new phases funded. 2 of these are in Osceola County. We have the complete streets project on North Central Avenue from Dakin Avenue to Donegan Avenue, Kissimmee. That has a new right-of-way phase funded in fiscal year 2027. And then there's a project on Buenaventura Boulevard from Simpson Road to Osceola Parkway, and that's now funded for construction in fiscal year 2025. Then we have a couple of projects in Seminole County. We have the project on North Street from Raymond Avenue to Ronald Reagan Boulevard, and the segment from Raymond Avenue to Palm Springs Drive is funded for construction now in fiscal year 2025. The remaining segment from Palm Springs to Ronald Reagan Boulevard is still unfunded. And then there's a complete streets project on Winter Park Drive from Red Bug Lake Road to State Road 434 in Castleberry, and that has a new design phase funded in 2026. Then we have the TSMO, the Transportation System Management and Operations projects. And on last year's prioritized project list, the list of TSMO projects was mostly the ITS or Intelligent Transportation System Technology projects on local road corridors in the region. And I didn't see any of those projects that received federal or state funds in the new 5-year work program. But this year I reorganized the TIP a little bit, and what had been just called the TSMO section of the TIP, I changed the name of it to Traffic Operations and Safety. And so I kept the TSMO projects in that section, and then the projects that were designated as safety projects, I moved over from the highway section to the new Traffic Ops and Safety section, just to give the safety projects a little bit more emphasis. And there were 3 new safety projects that are being funded for construction in fiscal year 2023 with the ARPA funds, and these were included in the group of TIP amendments that was approved last December. And all 3 of these are in Orange County. They include the safety improvements on State Road 436 from north of Old Cheney Highway to south of University Boulevard. And then there's the project on Conway Road from Devonshire Lane to Lake Underhill Road. And then there's a project on Washington Street from US 441 to I-4. Then a project that was moved from the highway section to Traffic Ops and Safety is the safety improvements on US 192 from Florida Avenue to Michigan Avenue in St. Cloud, and that's funded for construction also in fiscal year 2023. And then there's a new safety project in Seminole County on State Road 434 from Rangeline Road to US 1792 in Longwood, and that's funded for construction in 2025. Then we have the regional trail and school mobility projects. And on this slide, I listed the projects on that list from last year that have phases funded on our TIP. These include the Hickory Tree Elementary School Sidewalks project in Osceola County, which is funded for design in 2025. And then there are 2 regional trail projects in Orange County that are both funded for construction. These include the Little Econ Trail Phase 3 and the Shingle Creek Kirkman Trail. Then finally, we have the transit projects. And in last year's prioritized project list, these mainly included projects that are being implemented by links. And some of these are ongoing from year to year, you know, the capital expenses and so on, which involves purchasing new vehicles and passenger amenities, you know, transit stops, things like that. Then we have the the Sunrail Phase 3, which would run from the Sunrail main line over to the Orlando International Airport. And then Lynx has their southern and northern operations bases on the list. Then there's the parking expansion at the Meadowwoods, Tupperware, and Poinciana Sunrail stations. And then Lynx has service enhancements phases 1 to 3, which is the improving and expanding their route system in the region. And then Lynx also has the transit facility implementation phases 1 and 2, which would be improvements to Lynx Central Station and other transit centers in the area. So that's an overview of last year's prioritized project list and how some of these projects were funded in the new TIP. I wanted to mention that, of course, this area has a lot of toll road facilities, and I did not include toll road projects in the presentation today just in the interest of time. And since those are not included in our prioritized project list, you know, we're not involved in prioritizing those projects. But obviously, those are very important projects as well. And so, of course, we include the Turnpike and CFX projects in our TIP. And we will be having our virtual TIP public meeting this year. This will be on Monday, June 20th from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. That will be on Zoom, and there will be more information coming up on that on our website. So with that, that's what I have for you this morning. Again, this will be coming back as an action item next month. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Caskey. Do we have any questions? All right, I have a couple. On the I-4 tube portion, the part that was funded with ARPA funds, will that be a toll facility? Like there'll still be tolls on that part?
Yes.
Where do those funds go? Because the P3 project that was I-4 Ultimate had a certain number of dollars that were spent by the concessionaire, and then also they made those funds back once toll revenue came in. On this part, we're spending ARPA funds to get additional tolling facilities, but then does the money go back to DOT for us to spend on other projects, or does that go to the concessionaire?
I believe it goes for maintenance. Is that correct, Tyler?
I'm sorry, I would have to verify with the team for the exact breakdown on the funding.
Yeah, well, it's
Of course,
just
where it
do the
goes.
money,
It's
you know,
being
'cause-
done separately from the ultimate, so it would be a different.
Yeah, because we apparently selected that project to go forward with spending those ARPA funds. I just want to make sure the money comes back into Central Florida from that I-4 tube portion that's being funded with the ARPA funds.
Right,
So
right.
you can check on that. So.
Yeah, I can find out where exactly the funding is at, then where it's redirected.
Okay, thank you. And then you said you're moving some of the safety projects to traffic ops. Is that, with that move, are we still having the funding percentages by projects and by buckets? Does that change, or is it just a different way?
No, you're
we're
talking
thinking
about the breakdown of the TMA funds, the 32.
Yeah.
No, that does not change.
Okay, so you just show it differently
Right.
in the.
I just thought, you know, because we're trying to put more emphasis on safety, and, you know, previously they were just kind of buried in the highway section, and this kind of gives it a little more emphasis. You know, it ties in with the, you know, other safety-related projects like traffic signals, rail crossing, and things like that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure if there were monies that needed to go with it, if we just reshuffled it to make sure it went to those safety projects.
Right, yeah, it's still going to.
Okay, thank you. And then on Sunrail Phase 3, you showed the priority list, but I didn't know what was funded. Is that a part of something that can be funded in the next 5 years, or is that just on the list?
It's just on the list at
Okay.
this point, yeah.
All right, those are my questions. Anyone else? All right.
I would just be interested to your question of how is it broken down to hear back on that? So make sure we get a report back. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Up next, we have a preview of the FY 27-28 through 34-35 prioritized project list from Mr. Alex Troger with Metro Plan Orlando staff.
All right. Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, and to kind of follow Keith's presentation, Keith talked about the next 5 years of planning, of programming, of transportation investment. Our prioritized project list picks up where that leaves off. as he mentioned, and as I'll kind of reiterate, this is something we do annually and that we've done for the past 20 some odd years. But more than ever, our focus is on the first 10 years of our adopted long-range plan. That will provide us, really, kind of focused energy to make sure we can accomplish and implement that first 10 years, not only for implementation's sake, but it's also a federal requirement for us to only focus on those 2 plan periods. And as Keith mentioned, it's a focus on federal and state funds. That's what we're prioritizing here. We don't prioritize, how Winter Park or, the city of Winter Springs spends their funds. Our board, this advisory body serves in that fashion of the review of federal and state funded projects. Something else I want to emphasize here on this particular slide is you will see projects that Keith talked about, especially maybe an early phase of a project, the design, the planning phase of a project. You may see projects in both the TIP and our prioritized list. And that's because until the project is fully funded, until all phases of that project are fully funded, those remnant phases are identified in the priority list. So that allows us to look at what we're funding and what phases are remaining, because we're always going to finish what we start. That's kind of a board policy, and that's our prerogative of staff, is getting things done that we've already initiated. So again, it's a bridge, but I think it's important to emphasize you will see some duplication of projects, but not duplication of phases, because we're fully funding phases within the TIP. As we look at the approach, this is a recurring process. We do this every year, but overarching planning consistency is critical. That's what we're certified on. We need to make sure our long-range plans match our short-term plans, and everything in between lines up. We use board policy and direction. We've gotten feedback from our board as it relates to objectives, as it relates to performance targets, and how they want us to prioritize projects using a performance-based and data-informed approach. And that's how staff has conducted our analysis, with the end goal advancing those high-quality projects that align and really implement our regional goals and objectives. So some considerations as we're preparing the TIP, but more so as we're looking at what's next. Funding eligibility, that's first and foremost. Not all funds are created equally, and we have to spend them accordingly. So some funds have to be spent on the interstate system, some on the state highway system. Others can be spent, on the off the state highway system. So those are considerations that staff's looking at in our logic as we're recommending projects moving forward. We have to be in the cost feasible plan, first and foremost. It has to be cost feasible. That's kind of rule number 1. And then those last 2 items, funding availability and project phasing/readiness. So that's kind of priming the pumps per se. Keith talked about the early phases and some ending phases. Well, we're looking at how much funds do we have year to year. In some cases, based on our federal funds and our board split, we have $7 to $10 million to advance all types of projects. So with that being said, we're looking at putting some design projects forward, at finishing construction, right of way, and everything in between. That's part of us priming and programming and advancing those next phases. This list here may be familiar to most, and to those who are new, this was adopted as part of our 2045 MTP, and this is really our board's funding portfolio. It's probably a good way to look at this. This is how we're spending all of our monies that we receive, federal and state, how we're targeting and identified programs for the expenditure of those funds. The board set this and established these policies in the MTP, and we are implementing them through the prioritized project list, and obviously rubber meets the road in the TIP. So I'm going to go through each of these lists briefly and talk about some of the programs that are still under development, which is totally okay, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. Again, our key priorities on the interstate highway system, truck parking is, a critical one. It's also a national highway freight program priority, so that has been raised to the next level for eligibility for some additional discretionary funds that are focused on freight projects. And obviously I-4 Ultimate, beyond the Ultimate, really the ultimate configuration of Interstate 4 for general use and managed lanes through our entire study area. Obviously there's phasing on how that will play out, but generally speaking, as it relates to the priority list, we'd like to see all things going to their ultimate configuration. You'll also see State Road 60 on this priority list. Well, probably the first time you'll see it here. In previous plans, it was on our state highway systems list. That is a SIS facility. It was adopted as a cost-feasible SIS facility. That's a critical in the Yeehaw Junction area, for those who aren't familiar, that connects Osceola and Polk County. It's a 2-lane road, has some safety challenges, but per that plan, we've moved it over to this list based on the funding eligibility. As we look at the state highway system, this is where we work collaboratively with DOT to advance, key priorities. These are the top state highway system priorities. We have a lot. I think there's 88 or maybe 72. I think there's 72 state highway system priorities. When we look back year to year, especially last year, we had more state highway system priorities. But if you recall, earlier this year, we had the major MTP amendment where we updated our cost model based on, rising cost inflation. We updated that and we lost some projects that were previously cost feasible. So when you see some of those ranking shifts, especially, 88, 72, it's because, we basically lost half of that list based on MTP funding eligibility. Kind of pure and simple on that realm. But these are state highway system projects. As we look off the state highway system, as Keith mentioned, our board does have a set-aside policy for taking 10% of our federal, or our SA funds rather, to advance projects off the state highway system. We can blend these funds with TRIP to be even more competitive. A key note for these particular projects, especially as this is for our municipalities to advance local projects, is you have to follow the federal process. If you're doing preliminary phases, especially the PD&E and any of those engineering phases, have to be consistent with the state and federal process. But it's also important to know this is construction assistance, pure and simple. So the local agencies have to advance those preliminary phases, and we're here to pick up that construction phase. So this is what's currently on the list. A lot of eligibility, a lot of what happens next will really be contingent upon the local agencies advancing those preliminary phases, and us kind of coming to some memorandum of understanding that those phases will be advanced, because we don't want to start programming funds and then slipping on the preliminary phases and then create some challenges with us on the work program. So that's construction assistant. We're working with our local partners to advance those projects in a timely manner. Back to federally funded projects, this is where our board sets aside federal funds to advance complete streets, context-sensitive improvements off the state highway system. Keith mentioned that first one, the design phase is in the Transportation Improvement Program. We're recommending, following that completion of that design phase, that construction be funded in the next year of the plan. Some of the other projects you see on there, PD&E, so we're getting some of those projects up and ready for construction. We're also recommending for construction to be approved on that East Church Avenue project in the city of Longwood. Safety emphasis projects, this was a new program from the 2045 plan. Still needs a little bit of work. We want to make sure we pick those right projects, but we have a vulnerable user safety working group that's kind of made up of our technical advisory committees and our citizens advisory committee. We're going to lean on that group over the next few months to kind of frame out a process. How do we want to pick these projects? What projects are eligible? How do we want to advance them? So the next time I come back to you next year, we'll have a set of projects and we can talk about those particular candidate projects. But for now, we have the set aside funds. They are reserved for next year. So we just need to do our due diligence over the next 6 to 10 months to pick the right projects so we can advance them in the next TIP. As we look at federally funded systems management operation projects off the state highway system, you'll see preliminary engineering and construction for some projects in the downtown Orlando area. Again, these are the set aside from our board's TMA or our federal urban area funds. Some other new programs from the MTP that are kind of in the systems management operations / high technology category are ITS area-wide projects. So this is where we are setting up a program to allow our municipal partners to buy multiple signal cabinets, install CCTV at multiple intersections. So it's kind of buy many versus us saying you shall buy a CCTV camera for this intersection. You can identify those intersections, prepare a cost estimate, and we can advance them accordingly. That provides some implementation flexibility and really allows the procurement process to move forward a little more competitively. We see better bids when you have kind of more packages. And then ACES demonstrations, the MTP identified $250,000 from 2026 to 45, and that's focused on autonomous, connected, electric, or shared vehicle demonstration projects. What does that mean? It's yet to be determined. We're going to be working with our Systems Management Operations Advisory Committee to determine what kind of projects are eligible, whether it's, autonomous shuttle demonstration type projects to, types of electric vehicle deployment, charging, things of that nature. But again, this is another one, these two programs, we're going to be working with the Tesma Advisory Committee to frame that out, and then their recommendations will come back to our advisory committee process. So stay tuned on more, but you'll be hearing more about this likely in the next 6 to 10 months on those two programs. So federally funded bicycle pedestrian, really our regional trails projects. You'll see the three that are advancing. We're recommending these phases for construction. Shingle Creek in the West Orange area, as well as the E. Williamson Path in the city of Longwood. School mobility, Keith talked about this a little bit, but the FDOT has a Safe Routes to School program. Our 2045 plan also set aside funds to kind of pick up where that program leaves off, and we call it our school mobility program. So we're working with these municipal partners, but also in some cases directly with the school's principals to advance these sidewalk safety improvements. So stay tuned on these, but it's a different program, but just as important as the others, because we want to obviously, provide, safe routes to school. Critical sidewalk apps, another means of providing a safe access and comfort for those walking. The 2045 plan sets aside $1 million for critical sidewalk apps. We identified thousands of miles of sidewalk apps through the MTP process. We've done some due diligence as of now to kind of start shortlisting criticalness based on safety and based on some other factors. We've been working with the Vulnerable Users Working Group, and we continue to work with them in our technical advisory committee to kind of vet those bundles and advance projects for the coming year. So that's another good one where we can bundle projects and see high impacts in certain neighborhoods. Regional transit projects, again, these are just taking our key priorities from the 2045 plan and kind of re-emphasizing them. And these are the ones that are cost feasible, by 36. So we're looking at Sunrail Phase 3, basically getting, from the main line to the airport. Lynx's need for southern and northern operation bases for their, continued, providing continued service, but obviously and more so for their expansion enhancement of services. And we also have in our cost feasible plan Sunrail parking lot expansions, but we're holding tight on those, looking, kind of monitoring the situation, kind of as transit evolves to see the continued need and growth in those areas. So certainly needs, but things that we're continuing to monitor, as I talked about last month. Why we track trends is to make sure that we're investing properly and accordingly. So what's next? We've made this presentation to our advisory committees, and we'll be making one similar to our board next week. We sent most or all of this information, and as well as some web maps out in your agenda, but also to our technical partners so they could initiate their review about 4 weeks ago now. At their last meeting, we did request their feedback by this Friday. Our executive director has sent out an email in response to kind of churn up some other comments so we can make sure we get all feedback by this Friday so we can begin preparing that final document and prepare for the next round of meetings. Like I mentioned earlier, an agenda review. This is the next round is where Keith will be coming and asking for your approval of the TIP. And likewise, I'll be coming and asking for your approval of the prioritized project list so we can submit those to DOT and begin programming the work program for the next couple years. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Now's a great time for questions, as the next time, as I mentioned, I come back to you, it will be for your approval. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Troger. We have any questions? All right. Mr. Foraker?
Probably a tough time to address it, but I guess, where does the $1 million number for sidewalks over the next 25 years come from? Because, I mean, it still sounds great, but when you think about $1 million a year for sidewalks in a region this big, it's somewhat paltry, to be honest with you. I mean, Belle Isle's looking at replacing a lot of its sidewalks. We're a municipality of 6.1 miles. We're looking at a $600,000 number just for our little city. So these things are important. Getting kids to school safely, I mean, we have those issues, and so they're frustrating. And but they kind of get minimized in the overall scope of budgets and stuff. So where does that number come from and how do we augment it?
So it came from the 2045 plan, which was adopted by our board in December of 2020. A lot of the analysis came before then. But we conducted a sidewalk needs assessment and identified, the needs, the gaps, and how could they be filled feasibly. And I don't have all those numbers obviously committed to memory, but we identified thousands of miles on the state, off the state highway system. So some DOT will address as they're working through their process. But as it relates to the dollars, that was just a set aside identified based on some discussions with our working group about how we can target funds to accomplish some critical needs, just so we can really have kind of a focused investment. We haven't done that in the past for sidewalks exclusively. We've done trail investment, we've targeted funds for complete streets, which in most cases is adding sidewalks and bike lanes, but also comes at a higher cost because you're likely reconstructing the road at the same time versus, I think, based on current estimates, about $250,000 a mile for a 5-foot, 4-inch sidewalk, give or take. I think I can look back to, that's probably in the wheelhouse. So what are we solving for? We can do, 4 so miles a year. That's gaps, and a lot of it is gaps. So we're solving for 500 feet there, 200 feet there, a mile there. So, while we're able financially to kind of chip away, we'll call it 4 miles at a time, you'll start filling gaps where they're most needed, where safety is most challenging, where transit usage is most intensive, where schools are located. So do I agree? I agree with you. Could the number be greater? But as we look at spreading very limited funds, we have infinite needs and especially as we get into desires, infinite. But our funds are very limited and finite, and this was our approach to developing a portfolio to begin kind of chipping away at some of our challenges, where funding is eligible and what we can actually accomplish within the work program. So sorry for the long-winded, but it is a lot to unpack.
So I guess suffice it to say, at least we had to start somewhere. We got $1 million on the board, but is that inflation adjusted? So by the time it's 2040, are we still looking at $1 million, or are we $1 million plus the increases?
All of our revenue, at least as of right now, all of our board's policies as it relates to funding percentages are not indexed by any means. They're just relative to the allocation that we receive, and that's just kind of, obviously we revisit those, and that's part of the long-range planning process where we kind of revisit, every 4.5, 5 years, we are revisiting these policies, this portfolio, how we want to kind of fine-tune, reshape, redirect funds. And this was the first time we've ever targeted and invested with an end in mind. Previous plans, and the reason I said you talk about the long-range plan is the PPL and the TIP is the implementation of that. This was the first time where we really did set aside and focus projects based on the programs that we said were important. So could the funding be more? Absolutely. But then you're pulling from other, and the financial wherewithal from other categories that need more funds to accomplish the project types. So that's kind of the balancing act of setting up these programs is what you can accomplish with what you set aside.
Appreciate all that. So let me turn it back on. Appreciate all the feedback on that. And then, I do see an opportunity to pair new development requirements to add sidewalks and sections. Like Hoffner is a hotbed right now for industrial development, but I think we've had some pedestrian fatalities because there's no sidewalks on Hoffner, yet we have millions and tens of millions of dollars of investment in warehouses, yet no sidewalks. So, I just don't know. We've got to do something.
Well, and that might be a good use for, do you guys have mobility fee, instead of just transportation impact fees for widenings and whatever, just mobility fees that can be used on different types of projects?
The section of Hoffner I'm talking about is actually not in our jurisdiction, and that's what makes it tough, is that it's where it's the state road, and then City of Orlando is annexing, and so you still have parts of the county, you have the state road, and then you have City of Orlando, but most of the development is it gets annexed and then it's City of Orlando. So it's like a switch is missing, that it's fine, you want to annex it, do the project, but we need somebody, the overarching agency for planning, to maybe step in and influence and say, hey, how do we partner here and get this stretch of sidewalk from Hoffner to Cimarron instituted?
So were these things built at a time when sidewalks weren't required, so there's no way to require them to exist now? Because in our code, if you build something, doesn't matter what the use is, you got to put a sidewalk at the time of construction.
Well, I think there's some instances where it's not fronting that road, it's on something else, and the gap is,
Oh, it's
people are gonna
because
walk.
it's on an access road, so it's not
Yeah, so
required.
some of
Gotcha.
those issues. We're also having issues of traffic signals that were put in, and there's no crosswalks at it. So now we have all these sidewalks going around, but now there's no crosswalks at the traffic signal, and you have to pretty much redo the whole thing to make all that work. So, as we're going from more rural type standards into urban standards, I know, downtown Orlando's had all that forever, but like in some of our stretches, our municipalities, we kind of run into some of those issues. So, it's just something we have to work through. Any other questions?
I've got a quick question. What would it take to reevaluate some of the prioritizations for going to 4-lane roads and maybe shift it more towards complete streets? Because I would assume if you get a 4-lane road, you also get a complete street, but if you leave it 2 lanes and you make it a complete street, there may be excess for more complete streets.
Right, and I think complete streets is a process, and not to kind of lecture, but I see complete streets as a process, kind of first and foremost. So you're kind of going into the project with not an end in mind, not 4 lanes, not 2 lanes, not whatever. You're just kind of looking at it objectively. We're trying to solve for safety, we're trying to do the right things, and then you're working through a process. Looking at current traffic, future traffic, current conditions, future conditions of all types, and coming to consensus as a community. And DOT. And we have a process, to go through that process. It's a corridor concept planning where you kind of get to the end in mind, through a publicly vetted process. We're working with the city of St. Cloud on 10th Street right now, kind of on that. It's like some wanted to widen, not many, but some. Most wanted kind of more of a complete street, sidewalk, trail, lighting, things of that nature. So we go through the process, hear everyone out, but also look at it based on the data. Sometimes, widening is necessary, but not always. And I think that's where it's unique to every road, every segment, and there's a process in the study, that planning concept study is so important to answer that question. So before you get too far along in engineering it and designing it, you have an understanding of what you can feasibly do, and also your citizens, have buy-in to, the investment that you're about to make.
I do have a question. So I don't know, I know earlier you stated that the full project may not be funded, but the phases could be funded, correct? So I've been paying attention. I don't know where Kennedy Boulevard fits in Eatonville, Florida. But and I know that your work and your projects are based on data. So if right now in Eatonville, we have one development that's going vertical now. So you figure in the next 3 years, it'll be done, fully phased out. And it's going to be accessing a 2-lane boulevard that is going to be expanded to 4 lanes. But I didn't see it in any of the projects. So tell me how that fits in, or is that something I need to talk to you later about and you'll explain it to me?
So I believe, and for Nick's advising me, I believe it's an Orange County funded project, locally funded.
Yes, so that wouldn't be a part of this?
So exactly,
Okay.
We're focused state and federally, funds only, state and federally funded projects only.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where you would look to like the Orange County Capital Improvement Program, some of their priority lists for that particular
Okay,
project.
thank you.
And when you say phases, you're meaning PD&E, design,
Correct.
right-of-way acquisition, construction, those phases. So they have to fully fund designing the project.
Thank you.
Then they do right-of-way, they figure out what right-of-way is needed, they buy the right-of-way, then they have the construction fund. So those are the phases they're talking about. You can't just buy half the right-of-way and not buy the other half. All right, any other questions?
Yeah,
Yeah, many red.
Alex, yesterday, it came through in the Sentinel that Sunrail Brightline in Central Florida just got some federal grants, and you didn't talk to that. Does that money go to there, and does it, expedite how fast it's going to get done, start earlier, anything?
It's new money.
Were we expecting it?
We were not, it's new and discretionary, and because of that, we'll have to likely do some amendments to our process to account for those new monies. Similar to like we did about 6 months ago with the I-4 projects, the ARPA-funded, stimulus-funded projects. Obviously, the timing of that, those funds were, was not within what we thought. So we didn't think we were going to receive those funds, so we didn't have it in the plan. So we just bring new money in. So it's going to be a topic that we're going to be taking up with our advisory committees and board, likely in the next couple months, to bring that new money into the plan, and to do any other necessary documentation and mapping to identify routing and anything of that nature. So stay tuned for more, but yeah, kind of news to everybody. But for purposes of our process, when we do amendments to our long-range plan, our 2045 MTP, it's really based on changes to project costs, or timing, or new funds. So that, or less, if we say we learn, that, DOT has, less funds, we'll have to go back in and adjust the books. And this is the case where it's new money, so we can bring new stuff into the plan. So it's good news in a way. But, we'll have to do some kind of housekeeping documentation to kind of account for all of that within our regional plans.
Yeah, I just have one thing. Number one, two. Number one is, I've done this now for a little over a year, and I'm still fascinated by how far in the future you guys have to think, or y'all have to think. And so thank you very much for that. It'll last long before, while all of us up here are out of office. But thank you for doing that. The second thing is that if the penny sales tax moves ahead for Orange County, and this is really just for Orange County, there's a separate process that we'll be going through on local projects and that kind of thing. But I assume that if we prioritize those, if it passes and we prioritize those funds for a project that's on a Metro Plan list, that we have the option to come and work with you all to sort of collaboratively or cooperatively fund or reprioritize something. Is that correct, or how, do we know how that's going to work?
Not yet.
Okay.
There will, obviously, a lot of those funds are, going back to my comment earlier, those will be local funds,
Right.
At the discretion of the county commission. Obviously, there might be spending and, links spending, which you'll see, come into our plan, which may take some priorities or, advance some things that we have in our long-range plans that kind of were waiting for local funds, because, that's kind of the plan for a lot of the transit service anyways, to advance that premium level, that quality. Projects, there may be instances where the county wants to spend on the state highway system. I don't know that, for certain. And I think that's where, some of those partnership discussions can be had. But I think the board's also had a policy of not wanting to kind of invest all federal funds to one partner, kind of in the I guess the equity sense of kind of spreading wealth.
Right.
So I guess, the process will still be following the needs, the targets, and the objectives that our board has set. But I think there will always be kind of situations and unique discussions for particular projects if funding partnership is
Great.
there.
I just say that because in Winter Park, our three main roads are state highways. So, thank you.
I just wanted to add that we do a lot of coordination and collaboration with Orange County, our local governments, and DOT as we set this up, the priority list and the TIP. Just like Kennedy Boulevard, we know where it's at on the local list. It'll just be on a larger scale with the sales tax, with that coordination, making sure that we're still getting these transportation projects moving, but just who is now going to be responsible with the funds that are available.
Great, thanks.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you very much. Up next, we have a presentation on air quality, which Metro Plan Orlando has partnered with the UCF to develop a plan for mitigating the impact of emissions in Central Florida. Dr. Yu from UCF will present this information. Take it away.
Right, thank you very much. My name is Hafei Yu. I am an assistant professor of environmental engineering at UCF. So this is one of the, pardon me?
Professor, can you just project a little louder? I don't think we can raise the volume, but if you can just.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure, I can do that.
I'm sure everyone online because of the microphone, but.
Gotcha, no problem. So this is a project we have been working with Metro Plan for like over a year, about a year. So the reason why we do this is about this air pollutant called ozone. We all know ozone layer in stratosphere. So if ozone is up there, it's good ozone because it absorbs harmful UV radiation. But the same ozone, when you brought down to ground level, that's bad ozone because that's triggered health impacts such as asthma. Some people are very sensitive to the pollution. So ground ozone is regulated under the thing called the Clean Air Act. It's one of the biggest air pollution regulation in the United States. So in Clean Air Act, we have a National Ambient Air Quality Standard, we call it NAAQS. So in there, it sets concentration levels for ground level ozone. And the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, sets networks across the U.S. to measure ozone concentration levels. And if ozone concentration level violates NAAQS standard, the entire state's entire region goes into violation, and there will be mandatory actions has to be taken, and it's extremely expensive. So this is what happened in the Orange County, Orange, Seminole, and Osceola County region, in the past about 10 years or so. So you see the two lines over there. The black line is old ozone standard. The red line is the new ozone standard enacted in 2015. So the whole idea is that the ozone concentration measured in this region is very close to our violation. It's only a few numbers. It only takes 1 or 2 days of bad days, and we will be in violation. And again, if we are in violation, it's pretty severe consequences. So that's why we developed this contingency plan. We want to be able to be prepared if this thing violation occurs. So the thing with ozone is one of the most difficult pollution to control. The reason is it's not directly emitted. It's rather formed through chemical reactions in the air. It involves sunlight, this thing called volatile organic compounds, and also nitrogen oxides. You have two chemicals, NOx, VOC, you have sunlight. When you have mixed these things together, you have ozone. So in order to control ozone, we have to control, we call it precursor, which is NOx and VOCs. These two are directly emitted. So the purpose of this project, we want to know that we want to be prepared. That's why it's a contingency plan. But to do that, we need to know where is NOx and VOC come from. We want to know spatial distribution and temporal distributions. And then we can design different policies. If we know where they are, we can design corresponding policies to target these hot regions and to reduce their emissions. So we have 3 tasks in this project. The first task is we want to do a good job of capturing the emissions of NOx and VOC from vehicle sources, which is from cars running on the road. It's one of the biggest sources. Then we want to know the emissions and where there are spatial temporal distribution, all the other sources. So roughly speaking, there are about 13,000 different types of sources in this region. And finally, after we know, we have a good idea the distributions, we want to talk with Metro Plan. We want to be able to design corresponding policy. We want to investigate how the different policies will impact the distribution of the emissions. So as mentioned, the first task is about vehicle emissions. It's essentially complicated. We run this model called Motor Vehicle Emission Simulator, a MOVES model for each of the 3 counties in this region. And we estimate emissions on all the major roadways. On the second task, what we did is we first run this weather forecasting model. The reason why we do this is because a lot of emissions rely heavily on weather, especially emissions from vegetation. Trees do emit VOCs. Then now we are running this, it's called smoke model. It's a mouthful. This model is a state-of-the-art emission model. You run this model to estimate all the emissions from other sources. So task 3 haven't started. Once we're done with this, we're going to have a lengthy meeting to discuss what policy options are available. So for task 1, as mentioned, we run MOVES model, and we not only estimate the county total emissions, we also estimate hourly emissions for all 3 counties in all around the 36,000 roadway segments over there every single hour. We run that for 2011, 2017. The reason why we choose these 2 years is simply because this is the years we have the latest data available from EPA. EPA is moving relatively slow when it comes to emission informations. So we accounted for dozens of emission processes, not only running exhaust, but you also have many other emission processes that contribute to the emissions, NOx and VOC emissions. So just to quickly go over some of the results we have, what we see is that, by the way, also you see that we also include Lake County here is because Lake County is very close to this region. It's part of airshed, so we share the same air resources. So from 2011 to 2017, what we see here is that this is for NOx. NOx emissions declined significantly. And if you break down by different sources, you see the biggest source here is running exhaust. So this is tailpipe emissions for NOx. You see a teeny portion of start emissions. Start is basically when you start a car, when you crank the engine start, the engine is still cold because it's sitting for a while, and that gives you some emissions. So, but if you look at the VOC emissions, well, that's a little bit different story. First, you do see that between 2011 and 2017, you see the declining of emissions. But the sources of VOC is more diverse. You see running exhaust, you also see start, but you also see some other emission popping up, some of the EVAP system. EVAP is basically on every combustion cars, you have this system controlling the gasoline vapors, because you know that thing is explosive. So you have a dedicated system controlling that vapor, but that thing leaks. It has to leak. It cannot completely seal it. So you would have some emission from there. You also have some refueling emission. That's when you refill your car, and you do have some leakage from there. So these are some of these processes start to popping up. And we also compared our results with the National Emission Inventory, which is basically authority of emission inventory for the entire United States. But it's because it's for the entire U.S., it didn't give you detailed information. It can give you one number for entire county. So when we compare our results with the NEI, we see that it's relatively in the same magnitude. We do see some very interesting phenomenon, especially in Osceola County in 2017, where you see 2017 emissions, this is for NOx, is much higher than 2011 emissions. We dig deeper, we found that we went back to the raw data of NEI, we found that when EPA did their calculation, the vehicle mileage traveled information in the NEI is about more than 250 times higher than FDOT and our estimates. So that's the main reason why that you have much higher vehicle mileage estimate in their inventory, which is quite interesting. If we compare VOC emissions, we see the same thing, roughly the same order of magnitude, in the only exception is Osceola 2017. So these results give us confidence that our results are quite reasonable. As mentioned, we also did a detailed emission estimation on 36,000 roadway links in the region. Now this is for Seminole County in 2011. You see the different color corresponding to different emission quantities. So on this figure, you see it's about 7,000 roadway links, actually, roadway segments. So what we see here is quick messages between 2011 and 2017. We see the emission declined in 2017, and you see the less red color, basically more red color, more emissions. You clearly see the major roadways, 417, I-4, etc. I'm going to quickly jump over to other counties. This is the Orange County results, same finding. You can see the big major roads. You see declining emissions. This is Osceola County, and this is Lake County. I also want to quickly show you that this is we did since we calculate hourly emissions. Now this is we sum all the hour 1, which is midnight. in the entire year for each of the years. So this quick animation shows the diurnal, like within 1 day, the average hourly emission, what it looks like. So what you can see here is that basically you see higher emissions in rush hour. You start to see in morning rush hour and afternoon rush hour, you see the red pop up. That's where the emissions start to popping up. So quick thing, the same thing, this is for Orange County, and you also the same observation. Rush hour, we start to see the major roads start popping up. And I'm going to quickly jump over. This is Osceola County, and this is Lake County. So with all this information, it helps us because we know where the hotspot is. We know exactly where they are and by how much. And then we can design corresponding policies to target the different hotspots. So, and for next step, what is we're already done with the weather modeling, and we finished some of the emission sources. We continue working on other emission sources, as mentioned. So once we're done the emission estimation, we understand where the emission come from, what's the most important emission sources here and there throughout the entire region. Then we'll be able to get data. With this large amount of data, to inform our policy making, we will be able to know what policy will be most effective. Then we can understand basically how the different policies impact the distribution quantities of NOx and VOC emissions. All right. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Yu.
Logistically, how do you do it? That's extremely detailed breakdown, and I look at that and think, how can you know that?
Thanks. So for the traffic source, we run this motor vehicle emission simulator. One thing we did is that Metro Plan have access to this big data platform called the Streetlight, which provides extremely detailed traffic information in the entire region. It's my dream, actually. So thanks, Nick, for allowing me to access this platform. Because just to access that data, you have to pay a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort to develop that. So that's why we were able to. Because in the past, no one can do this. You do not have link level information.
Are you guessing then? So based on the number of cars that pass based on streetlight, you estimate the amount of emissions? Is that accurate? Or do you have like little testing stations where you're sucking in air?
We do have some testing stations in regulatory stations. No, we didn't run them. Yes, gas would be estimate would be the best word. So basically, what we did in this model, it accounts for like fleet composition, different speed, and different age of vehicles, different engine technology, basically a lot of information thrown in there. What we did is we run moves and we estimate about over 2 million different emission rates for all kinds of different combinations, different roads, different cars, different age. And then with the detailed information from Streetlight on every single road, we know what emission rates are. And based on that information, we'll combine them together, give us a best estimate. But as you correctly mentioned, it's our best estimates. It's not matter because it's impossible to install monitor on every single vehicle on the exhaust pipe to measure that. It's just very difficult.
Thank you.
No problem, thanks.
So truck traffic too. So you're estimating how much truck traffic there is on some of those roads, or we have that information? Because it seems like, I always remember a number of like 10% on some of these roads. It feels like there's 30% of heavy trucks on some of these highways. That was all part of the analysis?
Yeah, so on different types of road, we have fleet composition. That fleet composition, including trucks, and it varies hourly.
Okay. And then on one of your slides, it showed pumping. So like when we're pumping our gas, that's like 10% of.
Yeah, it's quite significant because if you think about gasoline vapor is volatile. That's part of VOC. So when you pump the gas, when you put gas in the fuel tank, you basically purge all the gasoline vapor out. That's significant. And also when someone pumps the gas, they also have spills. That's also significant. That goes into the estimation in there.
Wow, I never thought of it.
That's huge.
Pumping,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, when you can see the vapors coming out, I mean, it's crazy.
Years ago, California had implemented a recovery system on their pumps for that reason.
Yes, exactly like you mentioned. On some of the advanced gas stations, on the gasoline, handle, you do have this little pump that suck the air in. So that's targeting this emission source, because California is in big trouble with regard to ozone. So they have to control every single source possible they can think of. It's one strategy. It's costly, but it's targeting this basically emission source.
And that's the next steps that we'll be getting into, is looking at the toolkit of what we can do on the investment side to the, to the kind of private side investment that would have to occur. So that's kind of the end product of this, is to understand the issues, with the data that we have, to then, look to possible solutions to, remedy the problems.
Exactly. That's why we categorize the emission into different categories. Because for each category, you have different policy tools available, just like Alex mentioned. So, but it all depends on how much money you're willing to spend and what will be the impact you will have.
Very interesting. Anyone else? Questions?
Just to make a note that electric vehicles are going to have a significant impact on this over the next 20 years as they become more popular. That will have an impact, will they not?
So in our estimation, the electric vehicle percentage is relatively small, to be honest, because that's in 2017. Tesla even is not a big thing yet. If we run the same thing, maybe for 2012, something like that, even for beyond that, the impact of electric vehicles will be much more significant. But in our analysis year, it's not that big.
Is there anything that a regular person can do to lower their refueling emissions? Or is it like this takes special equipment? This makes me feel bad. Like, if there's something I can do, hold my hand over it, put a little bit of foil or something.
It's difficult because if you put the gasoline in, the vapor has to go somewhere, right? It's unless you ask the gas station to have this special pumps. Other than that, with regard to refilling, there's not much you can do. Maybe drive less. That's that's one way. Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. All right. Seeing none, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, we have a presentation on PedSafe 2 program in the region, which uses technology to improve pedestrian access and safety. Mr. Nick Spatola from Fowler Davis Consulting will present this information. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for allowing us to present today. Yeah. All right. So as mentioned, this is the PedSafe 2 project. This is the second phase of the PedSafe deployment, which has been funded by an ATCMTD grant that FDOT was awarded a few years ago. So what we want to discuss today and present to you is how to cross an intersection. I'm sure everybody's very familiar with how to do this. You walk up, you hit the button, think no problem, this is easy, I got it. And you stand there, and you wait, and you wait some more, and then you start to doubt yourself. Did you push the right button? The most important question is, does that button do anything? You think, I'll just push the other button just in case I've hit the wrong one. You wait some more, you wait some more. Our thought is, what if this could be different? What if we could actually start that pedestrian phase for you automatically so you didn't have to push the button? We'd leave the button there just in case you wanted to hit it and you felt more comfortable. What if there was a light that let you know what approach you were crossing so you knew where you were going from and to? What if you knew about how long it would take you to wait before you got to cross? What if we could make that wait time a little bit shorter? Would all of these things encourage you to wait to cross the intersection within the crosswalk and not step out into traffic? So now we're going to present to you an alternative, and this is a PED-safe alternative. So you walk up, you push the button, a watch symbol appears, and you see an indicator with a ring around it. The other thing that happens is a blue light turns on either side of the crosswalk where you want to cross. So now you know, you hit the right button, you know where you're at and where you're going to be crossing. The signal goes yellow, and that countdown timer starts. So now you know about how long you have to wait before you can actually cross. The signal goes red, that countdown timer continues to get reduced, and then the walk indication comes on, and you cross the intersection safely and efficiently. So these improvements are part of a larger project that's occurring along Orange Blossom Trail that FDOT is leading. It's from Holden to I-4, and it's going to install numerous countermeasures to reduce vehicle speeds, provide safer crossing locations, provide more restricted crossing locations to concentrate crossings at signalized intersections or mid-block crossings. It's going to provide additional pedestrian hybrid beacons, so mid-block crossings along that corridor. But it's also going to look at corridor-wide safety improvements. That includes some median fencing and landscaping, reducing turning radiuses to slow down vehicles as they approach intersections, some enhanced pavement markings and lighting, and also some additional improvements along the roadway to improve both driver and vehicle safety with the overall goal of reducing speed. So this is a list of countermeasures that project will be deploying. As you can see, LED lighting, driveway consolidation, improved pavement markings, reducing radiuses, so a whole list of things that they're going to be implementing. As that project gets underway, we're going to look at what additional technology enhancements we can make to further improve compliance and use of the crossings that are being installed. And the reason it's been broken into two projects is it allows us to do a couple different things. It allows us to continue to evaluate technology, which we all know changes very rapidly today, as that project is under construction. It also allows us to have the base infrastructure in place and operational before we come in and install this technology, so everything we need is already out there. It also provides controlled crossing locations, which we can better utilize to improve pedestrian operations. It also allows us to select a specialized contractor who knows how to implement and install these technologies to make sure they're functioning as intended. Quick overview of the schedule for these projects. The Orange Blossom Trail improvement projects are slated to begin here either this month or next for construction, and they'll take about 1 year to complete. The PedSafe 2 project is currently in design and will be let for construction early next year, and it will also take about 1 year to complete. One of the major components with this project and why we're here today is to discuss community outreach. We are trying to engage the community where they feel comfortable to get feedback on what improvements they would like to see within these corridors. We have ideas and we want to present them, but one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure those ideas address the real concerns that people have crossing at signalized intersections or mid-block crossings. So we want to present the technologies to them and get feedback. Is this something that is going to help you cross the roadway? Is it going to make you more likely to wait for the signal to cross the roadway? We also want to dispel myths. As we all know, technology can cause some concerns, especially when you talk about cameras. And so we want to be able to show people this is what the camera sees. It detects you as a person, but it doesn't identify you as a person. It doesn't track you. It's not looking to get information from you. It's just knows that you're there, and it can change the traffic signal for you, or it can extend that walk time if you need a little bit more time to cross. We also want to discuss the ongoing efforts in the region to make sure that they understand what the goals of the projects are, and we're looking to do this through some pop-up events within the corridor where we actually take the technology out into the field and let people see it hands-on, touch, look at, and get an understanding of what it does and how it works. We're also looking to engage the community on locations. As I mentioned, we have identified that project along Orange Blossom Trail where these improvements will be implemented, but we want to look outside of that as well, and we want to identify where these technologies are needed. We can look at crash data. Crash data is great. It tells us a lot of things, but it's historical. We want to know that maybe hey, yeah, you may have a crash problem over there, but I cross right here every day, and this is a major issue, and something's going to happen if somebody doesn't do something. That's the kind of feedback we're looking for. We also want to reach out and engage schools. We know kids take things home. They get excited about technology. So if we show them these things, they're able to take it back to their parents and say, hey, this is going on. Look what I learned about today. And it further engages the community. One of the other things we're going to be doing with this project, although a lot of the items we discussed today provide an immediate improvement, we're also looking to the future when we talk about connected and automated vehicles. And that includes being able to provide in-vehicle warnings. It includes future smartphone applications so that somebody that has an unequipped vehicle or pedestrian walking within the corridor has the ability to receive those same notifications of, hey, somebody stepped onto the road, pay attention, slow down. There's a vehicle approaching at high speed, take action to avoid a collision. The other thing it's going to do is allow us to have some additional statistics. We're going to understand compliance rates, so how many people are actually using the pedestrian features as intended, and those will be real time, which is extremely important. We're also going to get near miss statistics, which allows us to identify problems maybe before there's a crash pattern and proactively address them. So maybe we notice a trend of high-speed turns at a certain intersection where vehicles are traveling extremely fast as they take a turn. That allows us to take a proactive approach and address that before we have a crash problem. It also allows for real-time operational adjustments to improve those items very quickly. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are you working hand in hand with Bike Walk Central Florida?
No, somebody else asked that question. We are not working directly with them on this project, but that is a group that we...
I think that would be wise because I've been working with them on crosswalk safety for a couple of years now. Mm-hmm. And they have a database already. So I would think it would be prudent to get with them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because they have some answers to some questions you guys might have, and you might be able to get to the next step quicker with that. Question I have, is this for this technology, is it for like the research aspect of it, and you're going to implement it large scale in other ways, or are these cameras and everything supposed to be a solution that get implemented in a bunch of areas?
It's a combination. So some of these technologies were already implemented with the PedSafe 1 project that I mentioned along Alafaya Trail in front of UCF. Some of these technologies are already in use. Along State Road 50 in the Pine Hills region, some of these technologies are already in use. But we learned a lot from those initial projects, and we're looking to further enhance those technologies and use them to do a little bit more. The other thing we want to take into account is maintenance. That was one of the big concerns with the initial deployment. It's a new technology. A lot of local agencies that maintain traffic signals maybe don't understand how to maintain this equipment. They've never dealt with it before. It's not something they're used to. So we're looking to identify alternative technologies that maybe they're more familiar with. And that's why we mentioned cameras. You know, most agencies have cameras deployed. They know how to maintain them and operate them. So how can we use those cameras that are already out there, implement some new technologies to provide the same or greater level of service, but ease of maintenance. So it's things like that. So it's a combination, but we're also looking to develop kind of some templates that we can apply across the region. So the goal of this project will be to, you know, these are some countermeasures that can be used and they can be deployed across the district, across the FDOT's District 5, you know. So it is a combination of the two, is putting it out in the field today, but also taking that and applying those templates to future projects.
Okay, so you answered kind of some of the aspects I was going the path down with that. Next question is like, so I'm an engineer, and I understand that engineers try to come up with engineering solutions to problems and sometimes just completely miss the simple solution. So I've seen some of these implementations with mid-block crosswalks, and people will be jaywalking right in front of it, right behind it, even though all they had to do is hit the button and lights would stop. So are there simple solutions we can come up with of, if I'm standing on the side of the road and it's hot out, I'd rather be moving. So shade in some of these areas where there's a mid-block crosswalk, you just have some shade there, and someone might be a little more likely to wait the 30 seconds for the signal to change, the minute for the signal to change, to then cross. Are there simple things like that we can do?
Those improvements are kind of outside the scope of this project when we talk about technologies. I mean, that kind of takes, that's more of a landscape or other type project. I understand that, yes, that does improve things. One of the things we are looking to do is detect pedestrians kind of within that region of a crossing. So maybe somebody doesn't walk within the crosswalk, but we can detect them just outside of it, where they don't push the button, they just kind of come up, they look over their shoulder and it's cleared, so they step out, right? But now we can detect them in that area, and we can actuate the signal without them doing anything.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things we're trying to do. Or if they're just standing there on the side of the road, they don't want to push the button, you know, they're just kind of waiting for a gap, we're going to detect them automatically and change that signal so they don't have to wait. Because that is our goal. Our overall goal is we know a lot of the countermeasures, like you talked about, that improve safety, but compliance is not something that people consider, and there's not a lot of compliance countermeasures, and that's what we're looking to implement is compliance countermeasures. How do we improve compliance with the traffic signal as opposed to, you know, just putting another mid-block crossing out there, which there's already a lot of those out there, and they may or may not be used. So how can we improve compliance?
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question. So you were just saying that if a pedestrian just walks out, you know, this new technology will just trigger the light. Is there going to be a day like people, I mean, I can see that being problematic in a way that people kind of catch on to it, don't ever push the light anymore, and then you get into a downtown area where they're going this way, they're going that way, and people just start walking without pressing a light and waiting now.
Mm-hmm.
So is there any thought into that, and what's to cure it?
Yeah, and so that's one of the things we talked about when we were going through concepts is you want to make sure you don't give people the impression that it's safe for them to just cross wherever because they know that there's a system in place that's going to be like kind of like a safety net, right? Like I can just do whatever I want and there's a safety net out there that's going to take care of me. And so when we talk about that, you know, there's things like delays to making sure that they're present for a certain period of time. We define certain windows where it's appropriate for people to be crossing. You know, things like that we can take into consideration where we kind of refine the limits of where we're providing those improvements so that they still use the facilities as intended. And one of the things that this project in particular is looking at is, like I mentioned, some of the mid-block fencing and landscaping that's really going to eliminate those uncontrolled crossings and really force people to cross at very defined locations and not allow people to walk on the medians where, you know, because now we've got some plantings in there that would be very uncomfortable if you were to walk through them. So that's why we talk about being kind of the next step is once those controls are in place, then how can we further improve that compliance with crossings at those locations?
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Spatola. That concludes today's presentations. There are several items in your general information tab under tab 2, just for some general information. Our next meeting for the MAC will be July 7th, 2022. And then the next Metro Plan Orlando board meeting will take place here on Wednesday, June 8th. At this time, do any committee members have any final comments? All right.
Just one, I received notification that Commissioner Sal Ramos had an emergency to pull him away, so I'd like to move an excused absence for him, if that's okay.
All right. And is that something we can do, or is that when we take on the minutes?
I mean, he gave me notice just a few minutes ago, saying he got pulled away for an emergency, I think, water leak.
The way the bylaws are written, excused absences are determined as a, you know, this is verbatim language, case by cases by the committee, so it's truly your prerogative.
All right. Any objection for that?
No
All right.
objection.
All right. We will make sure that's noted in the minutes for next month. All right. Anyone else have any? Oh, on the committee have any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd like to, just let y'all know that this has been a hard week for the city of Maitland. Unfortunately, on Monday night, we lost our city manager. She got sick and went to the hospital and sadly didn't make it out. So, and I need to talk to you about that later because she's my alternate, and I have some issues. I'm not gonna make it next meeting. But that's what happened. So it's a big loss. She had been there 25 years. She was one of the best, one of the nicest, kindest, had outreach with everybody in Maitland. If you called, she was taking the call. She wanted to take the call and talk to all the residents. So she will be missed. On a happier note, I want to welcome Miss Gardner. I know Miss Gardner, we have, being Edenville next to Maitland, we've done some fun stuff. We rang the bell at Publix for the Salvation Army, and she will do great things for Edenville. So welcome, Ms. Gardner, Mayor Gardner. And that is it.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Up next is our second public comment portion of the meeting. If any members of the public wish to make any comment, please use the raise hand feature and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad and we will unmute your mic. After you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes, please. Do we have anyone online?
There are no raised hands on the attendees side, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and any written comments, Mr. Troger?
We have not received any today, nor in advance of the meeting.
All right, thank you very much. And at this time, we have no further business, so we stand adjourned. Thank you.
All right.